Hey, I'm Ava. My sister told me to stop dreaming big on my birthday. But what she didn't know, I'd already bought her entire business, her empire, everything she's worked for. Now it's mine. Sounds crazy, right? But it's not the first time my family's underestimated me. They've been hiding things, betraying me, all while I stayed quiet, waiting for my moment. Well, that moment came, and trust me, you won't believe what happens next. What will my sister do when she finds out? It's my birthday. Another year, another evening spent alone, hoping my family would finally notice. My apartment in Chicago was carefully arranged, candles flickering in the dim light, soft music playing in the background. I'd spent the last few hours decorating, preparing a nice dinner, all in the hopes that this year would be different. This year, I'd be seen. This year, they'd acknowledge me. But that's not how it goes, is it? I could feel the weight of the silence as my family filtered in one by one, barely acknowledging me as they passed through the door. There was my mom, her usual distracted self, buried in her phone. My dad, who rarely made time for anything outside his work, nodded at me with a tired smile. Then there was Delilah, my older sister, the golden child, as always. She breezed in like the star of the show, smiling, chatting with everyone but me. It was like the air shifted the moment she walked in. I couldn't tell if it was envy or just the sense of being invisible that gnawed at me. I had worked hard for this. I had set the stage. I wanted it to feel like something special, like I mattered. But with every passing minute, I could feel the hope slipping away. I had learned not to expect much from them, but deep down, I still couldn't shake the hope that they would at least notice, at least see me. As we sat down for dinner, I tried to engage. I cracked jokes, asked how everyone's week was, but it felt like I was talking to a wall. Delilah, of course, was the center of attention. Her laughter echoed around the table, her voice the loudest. Every comment she made about her accomplishments, her life, made my heart sink. She had always been the one they celebrated, always the one who did everything right, the golden girl. And there I was, as usual, the shadow. The tension built as the evening dragged on. Delilah's remarks were sharper than usual. She turned to me with that half-smile, the one that always made me feel like I was lesser. "So, how's the freelance thing going?" she asked, her tone dripping with condescension. "Still trying to make a name for yourself?" I tried to brush it off, but I could feel the heat rising in my chest. My anger was simmering beneath the surface. I could feel it, the frustration, the years of feeling overlooked. But I didn't show it. I couldn't. I wasn't allowed to. I had to play my part and pretend everything was fine, pretend that I wasn't slowly suffocating under the weight of their indifference. The meal ended, and I found myself standing by the window, looking out into the night. I was trying to hold it together, trying to keep the tears from falling. But then, I heard her voice. Delilah's voice, sharp and cutting. "Stop dreaming big. You're never going to make it." Those words hit me like a slap across the face. My heart sank. It wasn't just the words. It was the years of this dismissal, this disregard. It was the realization that no matter how hard I tried, I'd never be good enough for them. The sting of her words was like a fresh wound. I wanted to cry, wanted to scream, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not now. I walked away from the dinner table, retreating to my room. The apartment was quiet now, the sounds of the family gathering muffled through the walls. I closed the door behind me and stood there for a moment, just breathing. The hurt was real, but something else was stirring inside me. Anger. I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself. Ava, always the invisible one, the one who stayed quiet, who let the world pass by. But not anymore. I was done being that person. Done being the one who took the back seat while everyone else took center stage. I wasn't going to let her words define me, Not this time. I wasn't going to stay in the shadows anymore. I walked over to my desk and opened my laptop. The weight of the decision hit me as I sat down, my fingers hovering over the keys. The thought felt strange, almost foreign at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I wasn't going to sit by and let them keep me in my place. I wasn't going to let Delilah's words shape who I was. I would take control. The opportunity arrived, unexpected and out of nowhere. I'd been considering it for a while, but now it felt like the right moment. Without hesitation, I made the decision. I was going to buy her firm. In secret. I would do it my way. I would prove that I could succeed, that I wasn't invisible anymore. The night after my birthday was a blur of frustration and determination. I sat alone in my apartment, the quiet heavy around me. The sound of the air conditioner hums in the background, and I just stare at my laptop. The words my sister had thrown at me still echo in my mind. Stop dreaming big. You're never going to make it. I couldn't shake them. They cut deep, sharper than I'd like to admit. But I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to let my family, especially Delilah, define me anymore. As much as I hated the fact that they didn't appreciate me, I wasn't doing this out of spite. This wasn't about revenge. This was about me finally taking control, for myself. I wanted them to see me, to acknowledge my worth. But most of all, I wanted to see it in myself. I was tired of being the invisible one, the one who quietly supported everyone else, but never got a second glance. The sister they overlooked. The cursor blinked on my screen as I pulled up the details of the business I'd been researching for the past few weeks. It was Delilah's firm. I had watched her run it into the ground over the last few years, and somehow it seemed that no one else had noticed. Or maybe they didn't care, but I did. I cared enough to make a change. I knew it was risky, but what was the alternative? I could keep waiting for recognition, for someone to tell me I mattered, or I could show them that I did. I'd calculated everything, how much it would cost, the financial risks, the potential for growth. It wasn't just about buying a business, it was about stepping out of the shadows. I wasn't just a freelance writer anymore. I wasn't just the other sister. I was going to make something of myself. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing with the possibilities. Could I really pull this off? Could I buy a failing business, rebuild it, and show everyone that I could succeed? The answer was clear. Yes, I could. But there was fear, too. A knot in my stomach as I realized the full extent of what I was about to do. This could change everything. My phone buzzed beside me, and I hesitated. The number on the screen made my heart skip a beat. It was my lawyer. I picked up the phone, knowing full well that the moment I made this purchase, there would be no turning back. Ava, you need to be careful. This could have consequences you're not expecting, he said. His voice was serious, almost too serious. What do you mean? I asked, my breath catching in my throat. You're buying into something more than just a business. If Delilah finds out, it could strain your family relationships, and you should know, there are some legal intricacies in the deal that could come back to haunt you. I felt a rush of heat flood my face. I don't care, I said, surprising even myself. I'm doing this for me. I've always been waiting, always been second place. Not anymore. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear my lawyer sigh. I'll handle the paperwork, but don't say I didn't warn you. I ended the call, staring at the screen for a long moment before my fingers moved over the keyboard. I clicked submit, and just like that, I had done it. I had bought her firm. It wasn't just an investment. It was a statement, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was taking control of my own life. The next morning was a haze of mixed emotions. There was excitement, yes, an overwhelming thrill at the decision I'd just made. But there was also guilt. Guilt because of what I was about to do to Delilah. I knew this would change things. Would she understand, or would she see it as betrayal? I shook my head, trying to push the guilt aside. I was doing this for myself. I deserved this. I wasn't just going to sit by any longer, waiting for validation. I had waited long enough. As I prepared for work, my phone rang again. This time, it was Delilah. I hadn't expected her to call me, not after the way she'd treated me at my birthday dinner. She hadn't even acknowledged how much it hurt, but there she was, calling me out of nowhere. "Hey Ava, I just wanted to check in," she said, her voice surprisingly warm. "How are you doing? How was the birthday dinner? Did you enjoy yourself?" I was taken aback. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Her tone was too sweet, too innocent. But then I remembered. This was Delilah, my golden sister, always the one who got everything, always the one who walked through life without consequences. "I'm fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It was fine. Thanks for asking." There was a brief silence on the line before she spoke again. "Listen, I've been thinking," she continued. "I might be struggling with the business a little. I know I've been doing this for a while, but it's harder than I thought. I might need some help. I'm just not sure if I can keep it afloat." I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Was this a joke? Was she really asking me for help? Delilah? "I don't know, Delilah," I replied carefully. "That sounds tough, but I think you've got it covered." "Oh, come on, Ava," she laughed lightly. "Maybe you should stop dreaming big, huh? You'll never pull it off anyway." My stomach dropped. That familiar feeling, the one I had felt at my birthday dinner, rose up inside me again. But this time, it was different. This time, I wasn't going to let her words break me. "You're right, Delilah," I said, my voice cold. "I'm done dreaming big." I hung up the phone before she could say another word. But in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't done dreaming. In fact, I was just getting started. And now nothing was going to stop me. The weight of what I'd done settled over me like a heavy fog as I sat in front of my laptop that night, the glow from the screen illuminating my face. I hadn't expected it to feel like this. There was no turning back now. I had bought my sister's firm, and now the reality of it all was crashing down on me. Delilah's words, "You'll never pull it off," echoed in my head. But there was a surprising sense of defiance that followed. I was tired of being told I couldn't do something. I was tired of being ignored, dismissed. This was my time. But even as the excitement buzzed in my veins, I couldn't shake the nagging thought that maybe, just maybe, I had made a mistake. I'd spent the last few hours scrolling through emails, researching the business I'd bought, but the thrill was gone. Instead, doubt had begun to creep in. I looked at the business's financials again. It wasn't in as bad shape as I feared, but there were definitely more challenges ahead than I'd imagined. And what about my family? Could I really keep doing this if it meant losing them for good? The thought was suffocating. But I couldn't back out now, not after everything I had fought for. This wasn't about business. It was about asserting my place in this world. My family had always overlooked me, especially Delilah. And this was my chance to prove to them, to myself, that I was worthy of success, worthy of their respect. I closed the laptop with a frustrated sigh. Just as I was about to leave my desk, a notification pinged on my screen. I hesitated before clicking it, a sinking feeling forming in my stomach as I saw the words, "Financial report, business in the red." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just a small hiccup. This was serious. I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed. The reality hit hard. I had just thrown myself into something far bigger than I had anticipated, and I had done it in secret, without anyone's support. Not even Delilah's. How could I have thought that everything would just fall into place? But there was no time to waste. I had made my choice. Now, I had to make it work. The next day, I stood in front of my closet, staring at the clothes in front of me. I had a meeting scheduled with my lawyer and a few business partners. The weight of the previous night's realization still pressed on my shoulders, but I couldn't let it show. I had to pull myself together. This was my moment, after all. I dressed in something that would make me feel confident, professional, but not too stiff. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard. But the reality was, I was trying hard. I was fighting for something, and it was going to take everything I had. At the dinner table the night before, the tension between me and my family had been palpable. Delilah's passive-aggressive comments about my career were nothing new, but they stung more than usual. My father's cold silence had been the hardest to bear. He had always been distant, but his quiet judgment of my decisions felt like a final blow. "You're not cut out for this, Ava," he had said, with that disapproving tone he'd always used with me. "You've never been a businesswoman." His words hit me like a punch to the gut, but they didn't break me. They made me stronger. I was sick of being the one who always had to prove herself. The time had come for me to take what I wanted, to take control of my own destiny. I pulled myself out of my thoughts as I walked out the door and into my car. The drive to the office was a blur. I was lost in thought, my mind racing with the details of the purchase and what it meant. Could I really do this? Could I really build something from the ground up and show my family, show Delilah, that I was more than just the sister they ignored? The moment I arrived at the office, I put all my doubts aside. I had a meeting to prepare for, a meeting that would set the course for everything to come. I sat down at my desk, looking over the financial documents again. There was so much to fix, so much to learn, and I didn't have much time, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. I had to fight for this, for my future. The phone rang, breaking my focus. It was my lawyer. I answered quickly. "Ava," he said, his voice stern, "the situation with the business is worse than we thought. We'll need a lot more than just money to turn this around. You're going to need connections, someone who can help you rebuild, someone with the right resources. Otherwise, you could lose everything." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was it. This was the moment where I had to decide if I was going to back down or fight with everything I had. I couldn't back down. Not now. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said, my voice steady despite the rush of panic rising within me. "Get me the people I need." After the call ended, I sat there for a moment, collecting myself. I knew what I had to do. The time for second-guessing was over. I had made this choice, and I was going to make it work. But just as I was beginning to feel the weight of my decision lifting, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Delilah. "You won't stop me." Her words hit me like a punch. I wasn't sure what exactly she meant, but I could feel the challenge in them. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. The morning after the failed strategy meeting, I woke up feeling like the world was pressing down on me. I hadn't slept much. How could I? The numbers from the report kept running through my head. The firm I'd bought was on the verge of collapse, and I was holding it all together with barely a thread. My heart still pounded in my chest, the bitter sting of my father's words echoing in my mind. Sitting at my desk, I opened my laptop, dreading the numbers I was about to face again. The financial report from the business was worse than I had imagined. It wasn't just in the red, it was hemorrhaging. I could feel the optimism from yesterday slipping away like sand through my fingers. Did I make a colossal mistake? The question lingered in the air. The fear of failure crept in, gnawing at my confidence. I thought I could handle this. I thought I was stronger than this. But now, with the reality of the situation settling in, I wondered if I was in way over my head. The thought crossed my mind before I could push it away. I hesitated, my finger hovering over Delilah's name on my phone screen. I couldn't believe I was even considering it. Asking her for help felt like surrender. It was like admitting that I couldn't handle it on my own. But what if I was wrong? What if Delilah, with her business acumen, could fix this? The thought gnawed at me, but I recoiled, the sting of her earlier words pushing me back. Stop dreaming big, she told me. No, I couldn't give her that power. Not now. I closed my phone with a snap, trying to shake off the doubt. I wasn't going to be weak. I wasn't going to crawl back to her like I always had before. But the longer I sat there, the more I realized just how much I had to lose. I needed to get this right. The phone buzzed. I grabbed it, hoping it was some kind of miracle, news that the firm's financial troubles were somehow exaggerated. But it was just my lawyer, calling me back about the paperwork. We met at a small coffee shop downtown. The place was cozy, but the tension between us was anything but warm. As he handed me the papers, my stomach turned. Ava, he said, the situation is worse than we thought. We'll need more than just money to fix this. The debts are substantial. You're not just in the red, you're in deep. I forced myself to look calm, but inside I was panicking. The consequences of failing were too high. The idea of losing everything I had worked so hard for was overwhelming. My mind raced through the numbers again, but this time there was no escape from the sinking feeling in my chest. You should consider bringing in an investor, someone with more connections, someone who can help you rebuild. I know someone who might be able to help. I shook my head. No, I want to do this myself, I said, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. But even as I spoke the words, a part of me doubted if I could pull it off without someone else's help. He watched me for a moment, his gaze steady. I'm just saying, you'll need someone with resources. You can't go at this alone. I felt the weight of his words sink into my bones. I don't know if I can trust anyone else, I murmured. There's someone out there, he said, but you need to act fast. I let the silence linger for a moment. Then, without thinking, I said, I'll think about it. But deep down, I knew what I had to do. I had to figure this out on my own. I couldn't let anyone else take over. This was my fight. I left the coffee shop feeling numb, the weight of the conversation pressing on my chest. The decision wasn't going to be easy, but I couldn't afford to back down. Not now. Later that night, the family gathered for dinner, and the tension was thicker than ever. My mind kept replaying the events of the past few days, my father's words still ringing in my ears. You're not cut out for this, Ava. It was as if he had reached inside me, pulled out my biggest fears, and voiced them all in one cold sentence. I tried to push it aside, but my family's doubt was overwhelming. Delilah, as usual, threw sharp words at me from across the table. Her passive-aggressive comments meant to belittle my choices. My mother, sitting next to her, gave me that cold smile that said it all. She didn't believe in me. She never had. As I sat there, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't just battling the business world. I was fighting my own family. They were my biggest obstacle, and they didn't even realize it. But I was starting to realize something, too. I didn't need their approval to succeed. In fact, I was starting to wonder if their approval was even worth having. That's when it happened. Delilah's words sliced through my thoughts like a knife. You know, Ava, your dreams are just that, dreams. You're never going to make it. You're just chasing something that doesn't exist. I had heard it before, but this time I couldn't hold it in any longer. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor, the words coming out before I could stop them. You don't understand because you've never had to fight for anything. The room fell silent. I could feel every eye on me, and for a moment, I wondered if I'd just made a huge mistake. But then I felt something inside me shift. The anger that had been simmering for years finally erupted, and I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to sit there and let them continue to push me down. The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear the shock in their eyes, but I didn't care. I was done being quiet. I was done being the one who always gave in. Later that night, I sat alone in my apartment, the events of the dinner replaying in my head. I couldn't help but feel guilty. Had I gone too far? Had I ruined everything? But as I stared at the business plan I'd drafted, something inside me hardened. I wasn't backing down. I had spent too long living my life for others, bending to their will. But not anymore. This was my time, and I was going to make it count. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to my trusted mentor. I need help. Let's talk strategy. I can't do this alone. As I hit send, a thought flashed in my mind. What if they still think I'm just a little girl trying to play in the big leagues? But I didn't care. I was done doubting myself. Now was the time to fight. The evening stretched on, the weight of the past few days pressing harder than I could bear. I stood in my office, pacing the floor, my thoughts a whirlwind of doubts. The report from the meeting earlier today kept replaying in my mind. The firm was sinking, and I was at the helm, struggling to keep it afloat. I had taken a gamble, a big one, and right now, it felt like I was losing everything. My family's disapproval echoed in my mind, louder than ever. My father's voice, dismissing me as a failure, the way my mother's eyes held nothing but disappointment. Delilah's sharp words cutting deeper than she could ever know. They always had a way of making me feel like I wasn't enough. I had spent years trying to prove myself to them, but no matter what I did, they always seemed to expect more, criticize more, and push me back further. Tonight, I couldn't escape it. I paused in front of my desk and glanced at the phone. The screen lit up with a message from Delilah. My heart skipped a beat before I could stop it. I hesitated for a moment, then opened the message. She wanted to talk about the firm, the nerve. After everything she'd said, after everything I'd done, she was now reaching out, pretending like she cared. My finger hovered over the screen, unsure whether to pick up or just let it go. For the first time in a long time, I felt a deep, uncomfortable mix of vulnerability and anger. It was like the last thread of my resolve was unraveling. But then something shifted inside me. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. I wasn't going to let anyone manipulate me anymore. I took a deep breath, tapped the phone, and accepted the call. "Hello?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Ava?" Delilah's voice was smooth, careful, almost too careful. "How are you holding up? I've been thinking about you, about the business. How's everything going?" I bit back a laugh. She was trying too hard. I could tell she was fishing, trying to find out how bad things really were. I didn't give her the satisfaction. "It's fine," I said, keeping it neutral, but I could hear the sharp edge in my own voice. "Everything's going fine." There was a pause on the other end. "I just wanted to say, if you need help, you know where to find me. I might have some advice about the firm." Her words were careful, but I could hear the underlying tone. She wasn't offering help. She was offering a way in, a way to control the situation. "I'll manage," I said firmly, trying to hide the frustration creeping into my voice. "I'm fine." There was a silence, then Delilah's voice turned colder. "You know, Ava," she said softly, almost too softly, "you should really consider selling the firm. It would be a smart move for you. You've always had a way of getting yourself in too deep. Maybe it's time to admit this wasn't meant for you." I clenched my jaw, my heart pounding. I knew exactly what she was trying to do. She was trying to make me doubt myself again, trying to push me into a corner where I'd feel small and helpless. "You're wrong," I said, my voice tightening. "I'm not selling, and I'm not going to let you convince me that I can't do this." There was a long silence, and then Delilah's voice returned, but this time it was sharp, almost mocking. "You're so determined, Ava. But what if I told you I've already started reaching out to buyers? Just think about it. You could be free of this burden, and maybe we could all finally be on the same page." I could feel the betrayal like a punch to the gut. My own sister, trying to undermine everything I'd worked for. I stood up, the phone pressed tightly to my ear. "You've crossed the line," I said, my voice a low growl. "I don't need your help, and I'm not going to let you take everything I've worked for." "Maybe you should think about it," she said casually. "You've got nothing to lose." "No," I snapped, the words coming out more forcefully than I intended. "I've got everything to gain." With that, I hung up. The silence in the room was deafening, but I wasn't finished. I wasn't going to let Delilah win. Not this time. The next day was a blur, but something inside me had changed. I wasn't the same person I had been before the call. Delilah's words, her manipulation, everything she tried to plant in my head, it all fueled something in me I hadn't felt in years. The burning desire to prove them all wrong, to show them that I could do this, that I could be successful on my own terms. As the afternoon wore on, I sat in my office, reflecting on what I needed to do. I had always been the one to back down, the one who let everyone else take the lead, but no more. This was my fight, my chance to prove that I wasn't just the family disappointment. I needed to rebuild this business. I needed to get the help I had avoided for so long. I had to face the truth, and that truth was this: I couldn't do it alone. I pulled out my phone and texted the mentor who had reached out earlier. "Let's meet," I typed. "I need your advice on how to restructure this firm. Let's talk strategy." Then I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the screen as doubt crept back in. What if they still thought I was just a little girl trying to play in the big leagues? I couldn't let that thought take root. I pressed send, telling myself that this was the right move. It was time to take action. It was time to make the hard choices. And as I sat back, waiting for a response, I felt something stir inside me. Hope. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The night felt longer than it had any right to be. I sat in my office, the glow from the desk lamp casting harsh shadows across the room. I had barely slept, my mind racing through every possible scenario, every outcome, and every consequence. My fingers hovered over my phone, not sure if I was ready to make the call that would change everything. But deep down, I knew I had no other choice. I had to confront Delilah, and I had to do it now. The weight of everything I had done over the past few days was suffocating. I had bought the firm, I had pissed off my family, and now I was staring down the consequences. I could feel the tension in my chest, a mix of determination and raw anxiety. It was my fight now, and I wasn't going to let anyone stand in my way, especially not Delilah. My phone buzzed, cutting through my thoughts. Delilah. I hesitated for a second, my stomach churning, but I knew this moment had come. I answered. "Hello?" "Ava." Her voice was cool, controlled, the way she always spoke when she wanted something. "We need to talk." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. Delilah had always been the one to manipulate, to play the game with a smile. But this time, I wasn't going to let her. "I'm listening," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. There was a pause on the other end. I could practically hear her smile. "I think it's time we meet. Let's talk about the firm and how we can work this out." I didn't trust her, not for a second, but I agreed. I had to face her. I had to know what game she was playing. 2 days later, I sat in a plush private meeting room at a downtown hotel. The air felt thick with tension, and I could practically hear my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. The moment of truth. I was determined to stay calm, to remain in control, but the sight of Delilah sitting across from me with that smug, too perfect smile made my blood boil. She was dressed in her usual business attire, polished, pristine, and completely insufferable. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You've made quite a mess, haven't you, Ava?" she said, folding her hands in front of her. I forced a smile, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've made my choices, Delilah. I'm not asking for your approval anymore." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but her smile never faltered. "You really think you can handle this? I mean, come on, you're in way over your head. The firm is a sinking ship, and you're trying to steer it with no experience. You're just out of your league." I felt the heat rise in my chest. Every word from her was calculated, a subtle attempt to undermine me, to push me back into the corner where I'd been for years. I could feel the pressure mounting, but I kept my cool. "Is that what you've been doing behind my back, Delilah? Working to take control of what's mine?" I asked, leaning forward. "Are you trying to manipulate me into selling? Is that your plan all along?" Her face twitched, just for a second, and then she leaned back in her chair. "You think I'm manipulating you? No, Ava. I'm trying to help you see the reality. This is bigger than you. This is for the family. The firm is failing, and you need to let go." Her words stung. She was trying to disguise her greed under a veil of concern, but I saw through it. "No," I said, my voice hardening. "You don't get to tell me what's best for me anymore. This ends today." I stood up, my fists clenched at my sides, my chest tight with anger. I was done playing her game. The conversation took a turn when she revealed the truth. Delilah had already been working behind the scenes, securing investors for her own plan to take over the firm. My stomach dropped. She was trying to turn my own hard work against me. I had given her the benefit of the doubt for too long, but now it was clear. She wasn't here to help me. She was here to take everything. "Delilah," I said, my voice trembling with rage, "you've crossed a line. I trusted you, and this is what you do?" She shrugged, as if it didn't matter. "You've always been the one with big dreams, Ava. But you're just not cut out for this. Maybe you should step aside before you ruin everything." It was like a punch to the gut. She was trying to guilt me, trying to use our past against me. I felt the old anger rise, the same old feeling of being dismissed, but this time, I wasn't going to let it consume me. I wasn't going to let her have the last word. "I won't let you take this from me," I said through gritted teeth, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "You'll regret this." I stood up and walked out of the room, my heart pounding, my mind racing. I had finally done it. I had confronted Delilah. But I wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. Later that night, in the quiet of my apartment, I felt the weight of everything sinking in. The betrayal, the anger, the fear. It was overwhelming. But as I looked at the legal papers in front of me, a new resolve settled in my bones. I was done being the quiet one, the one who always took a step back. I had fought for this firm, and now I would fight for it with everything I had. I picked up my phone, dialing the number I had been avoiding. A mentor I had reached out to weeks ago. I needed their advice, their help. I wasn't going to let Delilah win. Not this time. The phone rang once, twice, before it clicked. "Hello?" "I need your help," I said, my voice steady now. "It's time to restructure the firm, and I need you to guide me." As I hung up, I felt a surge of determination. This was my fight now, and I wasn't going to lose. The weight of everything felt like a storm swirling inside me. I hadn't slept. The papers on my desk, the final details of my plan, all seemed to blur together under the harsh light of the morning. My mind was racing, filled with doubts and what-ifs. But one thing remained clear. I had to confront my family. I couldn't keep hiding from the truth, from Delilah. I couldn't keep letting their words control my life. I stared at the phone in my hand. Delilah had called this morning, giving me one last warning. You've made a reckless move, Ava. This is your last chance to walk away. Her voice was cold, cutting through the fog of my exhaustion. I didn't flinch. I had come too far to turn back now. Delilah thought she had me cornered, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. This ends today, I whispered under my breath, standing up. The words echoed in my mind as I pulled on my jacket and grabbed the files. It was time for the showdown. No more hiding. The sleek, glass-walled boardroom downtown felt colder than it had any right to be. The city skyline outside loomed, its cold indifference matching the tension inside. My palms were sweating as I walked in, my pulse racing with a mix of fear and excitement. This was it, the final confrontation. Delilah was already there, sitting at the head of the table, her cold, calculated expression greeting me as I walked in. Her polished appearance made me sick. This was the woman who had betrayed me, who had manipulated everyone around her, and now she thought she could win. I sat at the opposite end of the table, forcing myself to look confident despite the storm inside. My family was here, and I knew this was where everything would be decided. There was no room for doubt anymore. I had nothing left to lose. Delilah leaned forward, her voice smooth, but her eyes glinted with something darker. So, Ava, how do you plan to salvage this mess? You're in way over your head. The insult stung, but I forced it down. I'm not here to take your advice, Delilah. I'm here to take back what's mine. Her smile faltered for just a moment before she quickly masked it. You're so sure of yourself, aren't you? You think you can fix this all on your own? She leaned back, clearly enjoying herself. What you don't realize is that you're nothing but a pawn in this family. You always have been. No one expects you to succeed. I felt the heat in my chest rise. My throat tightened, but I refused to let her see the effect she had on me. You think I'm a pawn? I asked, my voice steady. No, Delilah. This is my game now. You've miscalculated. The words hit the table like a slap, echoing in the silence of the room. Her smirk faltered just for a second before she pressed on. Then, the truth came tumbling out. Delilah had been working behind my back, using every opportunity to manipulate the system for her own gain. She had secured investors for her plan to take control of the firm, and the worst part? She'd been using the family's connections to ensure her victory. I could feel the blood drain from my face, but I didn't let it show. My entire life had been one long game of trying to please them, trying to prove I was good enough. But now I realized this wasn't just about the firm. This was about breaking free from a cycle that had kept me down for too long. You've been playing me, Delilah, I said, voice shaking with fury but calm all the same. But I'm done being your pawn. She tried to deflect, her smile returning as she glanced around the room. You think this is personal? It's not, Ava. It's business. This is about family. A laugh escaped me, bitter and cold. Family? Is that what you call it? You've been using this family to further your own agenda. I won't stand for it anymore. Just then, one of the family members, someone I thought I could trust, spoke up, confirming everything I feared. Delilah had been working with them all along. The betrayal was deeper than I'd imagined. The weight of it was almost too much to bear. But I couldn't let myself fall apart. Not now. Not here. I slammed the legal documents onto the table, watching as Delilah flinched. The documents were filled with the proof I'd gathered, financial manipulations, illegal deals, everything she'd tried to hide. I'd been preparing for this moment, gathering my ammunition, and now it was time to strike. You think I'm the one who's out of my league? I asked, voice rising with the adrenaline coursing through my veins. No, I'm not backing down anymore. You're the one who's been lying, cheating, and trying to take everything from me. I saw the fear flicker in her eyes. But it was too late. I had already won. I've already filed a lawsuit, Delilah, I said, surprising everyone in the room, including myself. The firm's future is now under legal scrutiny. You've lost. The room fell silent. I could feel the power shift, and for the first time in my life, it was mine. Delilah was defeated, and I had exposed her for the manipulative, deceitful person she was. I could see the reality settling in on her face. The other family members, who had always sided with her, now knew the truth. She had no one left to back her. But for me, there was no joy in the victory. It was bitter. I had won, yes, but I had lost my family in the process. The people I once trusted, loved, and looked up to had turned their backs on me long ago. Delilah tried one last time to regain control, but it was useless. Her investors pulled out, leaving her with nothing. I stood up, my heart heavy, and walked toward the door. Before I left, I glanced back, meeting her eyes one last time. "This is my firm now," I whispered to myself, closing the door behind me. The silence in my office felt heavier than the weight of all the legal documents I'd been going through. The final showdown was over, and somehow it didn't feel like a victory. I had what I wanted. The firm was mine, and Delilah had been exposed for all her lies. But it didn't feel like the triumph I had imagined. I'd won the battle, but at what cost? I leaned back in my chair, looking at the papers in front of me, feeling the sting of emptiness. What now? The family I had tried so hard to please was broken, and I was left holding the pieces. The victory was mine, but it was bitter. The sense of relief didn't come with the satisfaction I'd hoped for. I picked up my phone, staring at the message from Delilah. It was the same old warning. You think you've won. The real consequences are yet to come. It stung, but I couldn't let it faze me. As I sat there in my office, I thought about everything that had brought me to this point. I'd fought for this life, for the right to stand tall, to be seen for who I was. I wasn't just fighting for the firm anymore. I was fighting for myself. My phone buzzed, shaking me from my thoughts. A letter from a former ally. A quick glance at the opening lines confirmed what I feared. There was more to this family's betrayal than I had realized. The letter hinted at a conspiracy, something I hadn't yet uncovered. I clenched the letter in my hand, a sense of determination rising within me. The war may be over, I whispered to myself, but the battle's not finished. It was late when Delilah stepped into my office. The city lights flickered outside, casting long shadows across the floor. There was a certain finality in her presence, stripped of her power, yet still carrying the weight of arrogance. She was here for one last confrontation, and she had no idea what she was walking into. I didn't stand to greet her. Instead, I stayed seated, calm, while she paced in front of me, her frustration palpable. "You've made a terrible mistake, Ava," she began, her voice wavering. "This was all for the family. Everything I did for us. Can't you see that?" I met her eyes with steady resolve. "You did it for yourself, Delilah, for power, for control." She stopped pacing, her face reddening. "I did it because I was the one who was always pushed aside. You've always had what you wanted, while I was left in your shadow." I felt no sympathy. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You've always been in my shadow. But not because I put you there. You did that to yourself." She flinched at my words, and for a moment, I saw the guilt flash across her face. Then, in typical Delilah fashion, she turned it back on me. "You're the villain here, Ava. You've always been the one who's never good enough. The family's falling apart because of you." I stood up, my body tense with the weight of my own fury. "The real villain here is the one who never saw me as an equal." I snapped, the words sharp and deliberate. You've manipulated everyone, and now you're trying to paint me as the enemy. But I'm done with that. You've lost. The events had set off a chain reaction, and now the fallout was inevitable. The family's division was no longer a matter of if, but when. I watched from the sidelines as old allegiances crumbled, each family member taking sides. Some were with me, and others were with Delilah, but the divide was unmistakable. It was clear now that winning the firm had only been the first step. The real challenge wasn't the business. It was the rebuilding of the family, and that was going to take everything I had. I knew that not everyone in the room would support me, and I didn't expect them to. But I had to face the reality. This family was fractured beyond repair, and there would be no going back. The bridges had been burned. Then, just as I was coming to terms with that, someone unexpected approached me. One of the family members, someone I hadn't expected, stepped forward with an offer of help. They promised to support me in restoring the firm's legitimacy, but I knew it would come with strings attached. I took a deep breath. We rebuild, I said, looking them in the eye. But on my terms. It was the morning after, and I was sitting at my desk in my office, the weight of the future pressing on me. I had a plan now, a clear strategy to not only restore the firm's reputation, but also transform it into something completely different. I was done with the old ways. I would build this business into something transparent, something fair. I would help others, just as I had been helped, and I would never forget what it took to get here. My advisors were in the room as I laid out the documents and plans in front of them. I could see the respect in their eyes. I wasn't the same person who had walked into that boardroom so many months ago. I had proven myself, but now my real work began. There's more to this, one of my closest allies said, interrupting my thoughts. Delilah's involvement goes deeper. We've gathered evidence against a high-ranking family member who helped her in shady dealings. I looked at the evidence they had collected. This was the final piece of the puzzle, the one thing I had been waiting for. It's time to expose everything, I said, a sense of finality settling over me. This will be the final piece of the puzzle. I stood by my office window, looking at the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the streets. The view had always been my quiet place, a place where I could breathe. But tonight, the peace felt different. There was a sense of resolution, of finality. The journey wasn't over, but I had made it this far. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and smiled softly. It was my lawyer. The last piece of evidence was secured. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. I had won. The future starts now, I whispered to myself, knowing that this was only the beginning of the new chapter in my life. I walked into the family estate for the final meeting, the air thick with tension. This moment was the culmination of everything I had fought for. Everything I had endured. My heart raced as I stepped into the room, but my resolve was unshakable. The family was divided, but we all gathered here today, forced by circumstance, not choice. Everyone was on edge, but there was an unspoken hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. Delilah sat at the far end of the table, her eyes cold but wary. The others, my parents, and a few distant relatives, were scattered around the room. There were whispers, glances, and a collective air of disbelief. The past couldn't be erased, but we all knew what was at stake. I've been through hell for this, I thought, standing tall in front of them. This was my moment. I wasn't the little sister anymore. I wasn't the failure they once saw me as. As the room settled into a tense silence, an unexpected voice broke through. The Aunt Claire, someone I thought would side with Delilah, spoke up in my defense. Her words hit me like a shockwave, and I could feel the shift in the room. The tides were changing. I'm tired of watching you all tear each other apart, she said, looking at the others with an unflinching gaze. Ava has fought for her place. She deserves her chance. The others remained silent, their eyes darting between Claire and me. I felt the anger from years of being underestimated and belittled bubble up in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. It's time to end the cycle. I'm done being the victim, I said, my tone final. The words were like a door closing on the past, and I wasn't going to let it open again. The living room was quieter now, the tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. I stood there, facing the family I had once hoped would support me, feeling the weight of everything I was about to say. I could feel the old wounds reopening, but I knew it was time to lay everything bare. This wasn't just about the firm anymore. It was about me reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my family's history. I've spent my whole life trying to please all of you, I began, my voice unwavering. I've tried to earn your approval, to prove I'm worthy. But the truth is, none of you ever believed in me. I paused for a moment, letting the words sink in before continuing. The truth is, all of this, the firm, the family's legacy, it was built on manipulation, lies, and betrayal. I revealed it all. How Delilah had engineered the firm's downfall, how her lies had bled into every decision, leaving me scrambling to fix the damage she'd done. But there was more. I exposed the years of favoritism and deceit, how the family had chosen Delilah over me time and time again. The room was silent, their eyes wide with shock. I had said it all. The truth was out, and it was ugly. But then, just when I thought I might have said everything, someone spoke up. It was Uncle Brian, the one family member I thought was always on my side. He stood up, his face pale, and looked at me with regret in his eyes. I was wrong, he said, his voice heavy with guilt. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry, Ava, but I couldn't see what was happening until it was too late. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign of sincerity. But the damage was done. You can apologize, but the damage is done. There's no going back, I said coldly, cutting off any chance of reconciliation. As the room quieted, I felt the weight of my words settle over me. The family was crumbling, and there was no putting it back together. But just as the tension began to suffocate the room, something unexpected happened. My mother, who had always been the silent observer, stood up. I couldn't believe my eyes. For the first time, my mother spoke out, and not just in defense of Delilah. Ava's right, she said, her voice calm but firm. The firm should be divided among the family members, but Ava should have full control of the management. She's earned it. I was stunned. My mother had never spoken like this before. In that moment, I saw her not as the distant figure who had always favored Delilah, but as a mother who saw her daughter for who she truly was. I nodded slowly, my heart heavy. If this is my destiny, then I will not waste it, I said, my voice steady, a hint of determination creeping into my tone. The meeting ended, and I found myself standing alone in the family estate, the weight of everything still pressing down on me. The room had emptied, leaving behind only silence. For the first time in my life, I was in control. The firm was mine to rebuild, to transform. I thought about everything I had learned. Power wasn't just about holding the reins. It was about using that power to heal, to restore what had been broken. It was about setting a new standard, a new vision. As I stood there, contemplating the future, my phone buzzed with a call. It was from an old enemy in the business world, someone who had tried to tear me down before. They were offering a partnership, a chance to change the firm's trajectory. I stared at the phone, my finger hovering over the screen. This was it. The opportunity I had been waiting for. This is the chance I've been waiting for, I whispered to myself. It was my time. That evening, I sat alone in my office. The city skyline stretched before me. The lights flickered, a reminder that the world continued to turn. But tonight, I felt a sense of peace. The journey had been long, and though it was far from over, I had arrived at a place of strength. My phone buzzed again, breaking my moment of reflection. It was another call, this time from someone who had betrayed me in the past. They were asking for a chance to make things right. I looked at the phone, my thoughts momentarily clouded. But then, something shifted within me. Maybe it was time to let go of the past, once and for all. I set the phone down, letting the city's glow fill the room. The future was ahead of me, and for the first time in my life, I felt ready for whatever came next.